folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Gershon, and this week we are doing another movie review. This is Scream 7 from 2026, yes, the latest film in the long-running Scream franchise. And this one is directed by Kevin Williamson himself, yes, the original writer of Scream. So it's great to have him back. And also, we get another huge return, and that is Neve Campbell, of course, as Sydney Evans this time around. That's right, she is married to a police officer. She has a daughter by the name of Tatum, played by Isabel May in the film. And she also owns her own coffee shop in Pine Grove, Indiana, this small town that she moved away from Woodsboro, of course, and now she's trying to move on with her life, away from all the craziness, and she's trying to enjoy life, you know. So we also see Courtney Cox returning as Gale Weathers, the only actor to return to every single film in the franchise. So that's great. You also have Jasmine Savoy Brown and Mason Gooding returning. So you got two of the core four from the last two films. Obviously, two are missing. Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega did not return, of course. You know, there's a lot of drama going on behind the scenes with that, and it was very unfortunate. But you know, at least we do still have some continuity from those films where you do have the twins returning, who are Randy's niece and nephew from the original film. So it's great to see some continuity there. And, you know, they mentioned several times throughout the film the events of what happened in New York in Scream 6. And, you know, Sydney kind of explains, you know, why she wasn't there, you know. Yeah. So this is going to be a somewhat spoiler-filled review. But I am going to try to avoid certain topics, you know. I'm not going to completely spoil it for you guys so you can't go out and still enjoy the film, but obviously if you don't want to know anything about the film and you want to go in cold, like I actually did, for the most part, I did see some stuff, you know, I did see the Rotten Tomatoes score, unfortunately, beforehand, and that got me a little bit worried. I was like, oh, this is the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score of the franchise. I'm a little bit worried. So, man, it's so hard to avoid the internet and social media going into these films, you know. That's why I wanted to make sure I saw it the night it comes out instead of waiting. Usually I wait till like Sunday because I work on Friday nights. So I specifically took the night off so I could see this film. And this is my most anticipated film of the year. So seeing that score did kind of throw me for a loop. I was like, oh, man. But of course, you gotta see things for yourself to decide, you know, how you feel about a film, you know. Can't always go by that, what the critics say and what Rotten Tomatoes says, you know. You gotta make up your own mind sometimes. But yeah, there will be spoilers in this review, and that's more focusing on the plot of the film. So I do want to discuss the plot of the film because, you know, you don't really know a whole heck of a lot what's going on from seeing the trailers. So they didn't really give away too much, which is good. I do feel like they gave away a little bit too much of the opening of the film, though, which I think is one of the strongest openings in the franchise. I really enjoyed the opening of this film. Scream, of course, is known for the strong openings, but I think this was one of the better ones. Very clever, the way they've set it all up. So what happens is this this guy who's really into the stab movies, which is, of course, the franchise. Within the franchise, you know, the stab movies are based on the Woodsboro murders that took place, you know, with Sidney Prescott and everybody else, you know. But yeah, it turned into a whole big film franchise, and this guy's like a wicked horror movie nerd, you know, like myself. Obviously I can relate to that. So he goes to visit Stu Macher's house, yes, where all the events of the original film took place and all the murders, you know. And he goes there, and it's like set up like this, almost like a museum of what happened. There's lots of props and, you know, really cool the way they set it up. It's a lot of fun. You know, there's posters of Stab on the wall, and there's a ghost face figure there, a moving kind of figure, animated figure there, which is a lot of fun, motion activated. And at one point, his girlfriend thinks that it's actually Ghostface in the house, so they try and throw you for a loop with that a couple times. It's very clever. And someone even calls the house and, you know, does the Ghostface voice, and it's like, "Welcome to the Airbnb." That was funny. And he's doing it in the Scream voice, you know, the Ghostface voice. I thought that was funny. And then, of course, another phone rings, and it's the girl's cell phone, and then we get the real Ghostface voice. So, oh, what's going on here? And yes, the real Ghostface shows up to crash the party of this, you know, Airbnb going on here. He's going to ruin their night, their vacation. So he takes out this young couple, and Ghostface is back with a vengeance, and he burns down Stu Macher's house, and you're like, whoa, this must be like personal, huh? You know, takes a real personal interest in the Stu Macher's house there. What's going on with this guy? Seems like things are a little bit more personal this time around. And yeah, I really enjoyed that opening. I thought it was great with the fire in the background. You see Ghostface walking out of the house, and the fire behind him is just really cool, really well shot. And that kind of reminded me a little bit of Halloween Kills, you know, when Michael Myers comes out of the house and is burning, you know. And there's surprisingly a few things in this film that made me think of the Halloween franchise, which is not, I guess, all that surprising. I guess there's always been a little bit of Halloween and Scream, but there's several scenes here that, you know, there's one scene where you see Ghostface coming out of the shadows, the white mask coming out of the shadows, and it reminded me of that, you know, classic scene in the original Halloween. You know, Michael comes out of the shadow and stabs Laurie, and she falls over the stairs. And there's a scene, you know, once they get to Pine Grove, Indiana, which is a very small town, very reminiscent of Haddonfield. And there's even a scene where you see the young kids walking down the street. It's so Halloween. I mean, it's just like, you know, Laurie walking down the street with Linda and Annie, you know. And I'm pretty sure that was on purpose. Yeah. And another thing that reminded me of Halloween was some aspects of Sydney this time around, where she's trying to get past the trauma and moving on with her life, trying to get past the whole Ghostface thing, just like, you know, Laurie was in the last film, Halloween Ends. But it's so great to see Sydney back, and she is fantastic as always. Absolutely a welcome return, very welcome return, because she just kicks all kinds of ass in this movie. Sydney is still Sydney. As much as she tries to move out, they keep pulling her back in. because the Ghostface killer does come around to calling her up, and at first she kind of, doesn't take it very seriously. Oh, you're just another a-hole trying to mess with me, but then it turns out they show a video, and we see it is a familiar character that shows up on her laptop computer. So somehow the phone ties into her laptop as well. And we see a video of a very familiar face. I'm not going to say who, but yeah, she starts to really get worried, like, wait a minute, how can this be? This is impossible. And she really gets stirred up again. And then we meet, of course, Sidney's daughter, Tatum. And, they have a real complicated relationship. She's a teenager, so she does the typical teenager thing, the teen angst and, acting up, And obviously when you have someone as famous as Sidney Prescott, that's going to have a lot of blowback, and it's going to really affect her life because, she's someone who's been in the spotlight for a long time, and Sidney just came out with a book that was very successful, telling about all the story of the Woodsboro murders and everything that she's dealt with in her life, and yeah. And she's got a boyfriend now, and Sidney does not approve of the boyfriend, and they really clash about it. She doesn't trust him because obviously she has some serious trust issues, and rightfully so. I mean, anyone she has trusted in the past turns out to be a ghost face killer and tries to murder her and all her friends, and how could she trust anyone, So you can't really blame her, but obviously that's hard on the daughter. She really cares about this guy. Why won't you accept him? Why won't you trust him? So it's a great, interesting dynamic between her and the daughter, and I really enjoyed that. Again, I think Neve Campbell is excellent in this movie, as she is in all of them. And Courtney Cox, of course, returns as Gale Weathers, and it turns out that Mindy and Chad, the twins, actually work for her in the news crew, which I thought was a cool way to utilize them, make them important to the story. Once again, so Mindy is Gale's assistant, and Chad is the cameraman, for the news channel. So I thought that was a really cool way of doing it. And Gale Weathers does finally get to have her big interview with Sidney Prescott live on television, and it's a big deal. And she starts really asking us some very personal questions and starts making Sidney pretty uncomfortable. She's like, I don't want to talk about my daughter and my family, things get a little bit heated, but, I thought for a minute they were really going to clash, her and Gale, and it'd be like old times, and she'd be punching her in the face the next scene, but, things don't get that crazy, Another thing I have to mention about Ghostface is he really gets down to business very quickly. He does not play around. Like, he goes right after Sidney and her daughter. I was like, wow, this is really happening very quickly, There's no messing around this time, Dex, very quickly Ghostface is in her house, he's hiding in from the ceiling, coming down from the attic, like, damn. And he shows up just as the police leave the house. It's funny. And I swear, you do have to suspend your disbelief several times throughout this movie, especially when it comes to the police. It's like, I get that this is a small town, but Jesus. Where are the police? It's like at one point Ghostface gets thrown through the store window in the middle of the town, and the alarm goes off, and you can hear it throughout the entire town, and the police never show up at any point. Like, what? They just don't give a crap in this town. Just like, it's just some idiot making noise, some hoodlums or something. They know a killer is out on the loose. There have already been killings from the Ghostface killer. And they just don't care. It's hilarious. And there is some good humor in this film. That is intentional, of course. Of course, you get some great horror trivia and stuff. There's one part that I thought was a lot of fun when they were talking about Friday 13th. And, one of the questions from Ghostface was like, how old was Jason when he drowned at the lake? And, start getting into all the details. I'm like, I had to stop and think. I'm like, I don't really know, And then, of course, it ended up being a trick question, just like in the original Scream. So I thought that was a lot of fun. And there's a lot of nods to classic horror as well. And especially when you're dealing with, you got several horror nerds in this movie. Especially Mindy, of course, is a hardcore horror fan. You see her doing her thing. And then one of the other kids. So you got a few new characters as well, as you always do in these films. But I say they're mostly kind of throwaway, Really, the returning characters are the only interesting ones. There's a few that are like, they're just there, But one of them is like a wicked horror nerd, and he's very into Sidney Prescott. Whenever he sees Sidney, he kind of like gets all flustered because, she's an icon, she really is. And he's very into true crime and stuff, Then, of course, you got, Tatum's boyfriend and, the several characters. And he's also very into true crime and stuff, too, as we find out. And he's very into tech stuff, And I like how the film does incorporate, modern elements of technology, of course, as the Scream franchise is always very good with that. Each film they get a little bit more into today's technology. You started with the first Scream when Drew Barrymore had the big, huge phone. It was like a brick, and now you got AI and stuff, so they do get into AI in this film. And I think it's very clever how they use AI in the film, and it's definitely an interesting part of the film, and it's a big part of the film, too. And that makes sense, of course. You got to adapt to today's technology, And how does Ghostface adapt to that, too? Which is interesting, So I think this is a solid film in the franchise. So I don't agree with a lot of the negative press that's been going around this film. I think it's a really solid entry. It's certainly not on the bottom of the barrel of Scream films. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle if I had to rank it, which I will be doing a ranking of the Scream franchise soon. Definitely, I think it's time, We've had 7 films now. It's time to rank them. But I will agree with the ending, a lot of people have a problem with the ghost face reveal in this film because, that's always been a huge part of the Scream, is revealing the killer, Because it's always the whodunit aspect of Scream that is a lot of fun. And the first 2/3 of this film, it was very interesting leading up to the end, I thought it was very intense, scary, great tension, great suspense. And the kills are just awesome in this movie, too. This might be the most brutal Scream movie in the franchise. There's some really nasty kills, and I'm not going to tell you what they are. I want you to go in and enjoy it and be shocked, you know. I do think that sometimes they may go a little bit too far with the jump scares. There's a bit too many fake jump scares for my taste, you know. But, you know, that being said, I do think this is definitely one of the weakest Ghostface reveals in the franchise, and you're just like, oh, come on. And it reminded me of Jay and Silent Bob, Strikes Back. That scene where Wes Craven makes a cameo and he's filming a Scream-type movie with Shannon Doherty. And then Ghostface takes off the mask and it's a monkey, and Shannon Doherty's like, are you guys even trying anymore, Wes? That's what it reminded me of when you see the end of the Ghostface reveal. I love everything leading up to the grand finale, though. Like I said, the use of AI and what happens afterwards in the wake of the Ghostface reveal, I thought was intense. Like the chase afterwards was very well done, very violent, very intense. But the actual reveal itself, you're just like, really? Really? That's who it is? Come on! Oh, man. I'd say it was similar to Scream 6. I also had a problem with the ghost reveal of Scream 6 was a little rough, you know. It was like, very campy. And I'd say it's very similar to Scream 6 in that sense. Very disappointed with the Ghostface reveal in that one. I thought it was it wasn't super campy like that, but just like who it ends up being, you're like, what? There's another scene that happens around the middle of the film when you think, oh, the movie's gonna be over. Like, wait a minute, what? That was shocking, you know, like, whoa. You know, I thought that was more interesting than the ending, that maybe they should have ended it in the middle instead of, like, roll the credits, like, halfway through the movie. Roll it here, and this would have been a good movie, you know, this would have been a really solid film in the franchise if you just ended it halfway through instead of that kind of bad Ghostface reveal. But overall, I did really enjoy Scream 7. It's got some great kills. Ghostface is just kicking ass and, you know, and taking names. And I loved seeing Sidney back. And this time around, so much of the focus of the film is on her, which it hasn't been in a really long time. Several of the Scream films, she's just kind of almost like in the background or comes in at the end or halfway through the movie. Here, she is up front and center, so that's great to see, and she has a great performance. So if you love Sidney Prescott, you will love this film because she kicks all kinds of ass, and she is a true final girl and one of the best ever to do it. And maybe even the best, I don't know. She's definitely getting up there. And it's great to see Gail back. She does a great job. I was a little bit worried seeing the trailer, too, that they were going to clash. That her and Sidney were going to clash once again, and that things were going to be real catty with them, you know. It wasn't really like that. There is, like, one scene where it gets a little uneasy, but, you know, I love how she says eventually that, you know, as I mentioned before, Sidney has serious trust issues, but in the end she does come to trust Gale Weathers. She says, I trust you. And I thought that was a really nice moment between the two. You know, that was great. But yeah, I really enjoyed the film. It's got some nice surprises in there, you know, with some of the characters from the history of the franchise show up, and that's a lot of fun. Yeah, I thought it's got some great action, some great scares, some great suspense. I really like Kevin Williamson's direction in this film. It was great seeing him return. And he does a great job, you know, taking on the mantle from Wes Craven, the great Wes Craven, and he does a great job. So I still think Scream is in great hands, you know. I still think it can continue and do well, and I think this one will do well, despite some of the bad critic reviews and some of the negative press that it's gotten. I still think it's going to do well because everyone wants to see the next Scream movie. They even got Scary Movie 6 coming out now. So, yeah, there's even more to make fun of. So, I definitely recommend Scream 7. I do give it 2 devil horns up. And thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Urshan, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared. Good evening, folks, and we got some brand new merchandise for you over at www.thehorrorcona.com, and that's CONA.com. Representing the Horror Corner. Great new design. We got the Morbid Hour live stream there, you got the Horror Hangout live stream there, and you got my nemesis, the Dark Fate. So grab your t-shirt over at www.thehorrorcona.com. And we also got this beautiful new mug. Look at that. Very, very cool. Thought that came out really nice. So grab your merchandise today over at www.thehorrorcona.com.